Gribas, and welcome to the Orc Fort Podcast, a podcast where we discuss all things Ultima Online through the eyes of Orc roleplayers. I am your host, Xu'rek, and today we have a very special guest, Mr. Gruul. And I discuss magery, its role within the Bloodrock clan, the orcish gods, and quite a bit more. So, grab a bottle of grog, sharpen your blood axe, and march on into the Orc Fort. Find a spot next to the big fire, and enjoy today's episode. All right, welcome to the Orc Fort Podcast. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. How have you been?
Pretty good. I appreciate you joining us in this awesome episode. I've already given you a brief introduction at the intro, but I want to take a second and see if you could introduce yourself to the listeners.
Yeah, I am Gruul. I am the head Shakar, which probably means nothing to most of you listening, but essentially that would be like the high priest or head shaman of the orc god Xu'rek.
Okay, and they're probably like, what the heck's a Xu'rek, right? We're going to get into that today. So, so you are a mage and an orc, and I know that's sort of a little rare. Give us a background about what being a mage even means in the Bloodrock clan.
Well, in the parallel that has always made the most sense to me is that if you look through, human history, right, there's always been a separate caste or group of people that asserted that, hey, there's another facet to the world we live in, and we can interact with it, so let us do that, and we're really valuable to have around. And that's kind of how I see the orc mages, or Mojokas as we call them. We're kind of the liaisons between the spirit world and the real world for the rest of the clan. Okay.
Now, you weren't always a mage, right? You didn't join as a mage. I know this. It's a rhetorical question. I know the answer, but talk to us a little bit about how you came to be a mage within the clan. I say that because you know this, but we get messages all the time from new players who are interested in joining, and the first question they always ask is, can I be a mage? And the immediate response is, fuck no, right? Hell no, you cannot be one. But how did you become one?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's something that I do want to point out. Different orc clans do differently, and even the same orc clans haven't necessarily done it the same way throughout their entire history. A few years ago, we introduced the scarring system for ranking up and making sure that we were essentially tracking player contributions, right? And that people were being ranked up fairly. And when that was introduced, it was decided that they were going to essentially gatekeep the mage ranks based on how much you've contributed and how much you've done. So, for me, when I made the character, I had to get all the way up to Raider, which is the highest non-officer rank that an orc can be. And then at that point, I was given the go-ahead to make this character and start him off at a bottom-tier young Mojoka rank, back when that was the lowest thing a mage could be. And then I had to climb all the way back up, and then climb up into officer ranks, which was a whole other facet to that. But essentially, you have to show that you're devoted, you have to show that you want to stick with us, and you have to just keep working with us. Nowadays, it is both easier and harder. You only have to be a grunt to get there at plus 100 scars.
Right.
But, it takes a lot longer to get to grunt than it used to as well, because we've done so many revisions of the scar system.
And I think, the big thing there also, is that, magery in Ultima Online, if anyone is listening and doesn't play Ultima, magery is pretty much the skill that most players consider to be the most crucial type of skill. So it's very common, and so it's not strange that people want to be mages. Our clan has taken it upon themselves to restrict it because it offers a different sort of play style. But yeah, restricting magery for us is a roleplay decision, but also because, it makes the game a little different. Well, actually, it makes the game a lot different when you can't rely on magery. and for us, it makes it more fun. So having a few mages around who've earned that rank and earned that title for us makes the most sense. But I know that isn't a one size fits all sort of situation with orc clans.
Absolutely. A very interesting point that raises, again, for people who don't really play a lot of UO or just aren't familiar with Bloodrock or clans in general, is that we are very heavy on restrictions. You know, which weapons you're allowed to use, which equipment you're allowed to wear. You know, there's only a small amount of armor in the game that our orcs are allowed to wear. There are basically 2 types of helmet. Yeah, well, 3 with snotlings, I guess.
The bucket doesn't count.
Yeah,
But
who counts snotlings? They're terrible. But you know, there's always a lot of restrictions on place in a good orc clan, right? We also don't allow chivalry. For the longest time, we didn't allow necromancy. It's just a lot, but the restrictions add flavor and they add a lot of fun. You know, some guilds want to just have everything, go at it, do what you want to do, and that's a perfectly valid way to play the game. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and say a bunch of stuff about it because however you want to play the game is however you want to play the game. It's kind of the beauty of UO, right? Is how open and free form it is. But if you're looking for that extra challenge and you're looking for something with a lot of interesting flavor, something with a lot that I'm messing up coming up with the wording here, but just something with it's just a completely different way of playing the game. It's a very unusual feeling. Like I've tried to do the normal quote unquote way of playing the game in a non-RP guild and just acting, you know, like myself and playing with no restrictions, and I just can't do it. You know, I've been doing the orc thing for so long, it's just the way that feels right for me to play.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point because the restrictions have been around from the beginning, really, right? And it kind of makes sense. And even if you look at the Ultima Online realm, far and few are the orc mages NPCs that you see, right? Most of them are going to be the brutes or the shitty little, the brown ones that just kind of are dumb walking around. So in a way, I think we sort of mirrored because we saw it like that. There are some orc mages that exist out, and they're there, but they're rare for sure. The more common ones are around, so us mirroring that isn't sort of unusual. And I think it also handicaps us in a way that makes it more fun, you know, and playing a mage for you is a little different than most people, right? So if you could kind of talk about it a bit, because I think when most people think about magery and UO, they have an idea in their mind of what that playstyle looks like. But I know that, and I don't play a mage, but I know that magery in our clan is a little different than the usual magery usage.
So for a lot of people in UO that play mages, a lot of them have a tendency to be very focused on just getting the dump and the kill.
Right.
I don't think that's necessarily the pro way to play. I've seen a lot of people in PvP guilds who are much more oriented towards teamwork, but I don't think that's the majority of mage players that I see out in the world. A lot of the time it's very, very focused on kind of the ego trip of being the guy with the attacks that don't miss,
Right.
you know, unlike the Hexers.
That's a whole other thing, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So you kind of go out there and you just try and get that dump and get that quick dopamine rush of actually pulling off the dump because your opponent didn't off-screen you. And there you go. You did it.
Right.
It's really not the efficient way to play. And, you know, we've had to design a whole system to discourage new orc mages from doing that, which I'm sure we'll be talking about soon. But the real thing is that, you know, even with those pro PvPers who are out there doing the teamwork thing, you know, they're G-healing each other, they're complementing each other's dumps, they're doing sync dumps on people.
Right.
It just, you can't sync dump when you have every bit of 2 mages on the field, right? Little easier with archers, but still, that's just not the way that it's going to work. Here you are supporting a team. You know, you are casting heal on people who are very restricted because of bandage timers and potion timers. You're trying to keep a whole team of people alive. You're trying to run interference with walls. Nerul is much, much better at the walls than I am.
I think it's second nature for him at this point. The dude's been putting up walls
Oh
since
yeah,
'98.
I know. He makes it look really easy. I thought it was going to be so much easier when I made this character, and it just isn't. It's something I still need practice with, even after having played this character for a couple of years. And but the healing, the walls, massive, massive part of it. There's also keeping your eye out on the enemy's health bar, sniping people down when they're redlined so they don't recover. It's all about going with the flow of what your Dexers are doing and helping to turn that tide, right? So you're kind of having to watch the entire field and looking for opportunities and looking for things that worry you. Things like, oh, I have one of my guys is clearly being targeted. Well, I have to keep him alive. Oh, all my guys are over here trying to catch this guy who's running off. I need to use a paralyzer, a wall, or something else. It's all about using the toolkit you have in a much more team-oriented way.
And I think
Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, I think, the way we have our system where you don't start off with the ability to make a mage until much later on. I don't know, a year and a half in or something. Like a year if you're the very active orc, probably more like 2, or a year and a half or something like that. But the point is that you're going to be embedded to our clan for a while. So when you do become a mage, you've already built this relationship with these other people. And guess what? You've been in the trenches, right? You've been in the front lines where we're fighting a PK guild or something, or some blues attacking us or whatever, and you're getting synced up. So you know what it's like when that mage saves your ass, right? With that G heal or throws down a wall and just saves you. So you've been there, you know what it's like. And so you now are a mage, more likely to sort of play with that in mind versus just trying to secure kills for your grudge book or whatever the hell people do.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's really where I learned a lot of that difference in playstyle, was just watching Nerul support the Dexers. And after he saved me a few times with quick G heals, I was like, okay, this clan actually does that. Because I wasn't always in Bloodrock. When I was in high school, I was playing on a totally different server from this guild, and we had mages who had a slightly more self-centered playstyle on stuff. So they were damage oriented. We might need to edit that one now that I read that back to myself. But no, they were more focused on the explosions, right? Big booms, and they really did not like healing us. So I died a lot running past a mage, like begging for a heal. So
and they're busy loading the dumps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I really internalized that, and watching the people here in Bloodrock supporting the Dexers, doing the team-oriented playstyle, it clicked for me very, very quickly, and so that's just the playstyle that we encourage now, and we do force our new mages to really learn how to do that.
Yeah, and I think it I don't want to say we beat it out of them in the early stages, but kinda, in a sense that by the time they get there, what a lot of people don't realize is that you see so few mages, you being one, we have several, but there's not many compared to the grunt core. I mean, 10% of your time you're gating people, right? Because you're working with a group of orcs who can't use magery. And one thing to clarify for anyone listening, when we say you can't use magery, we mean no magery at all. We don't want you recalling with a rune book. We don't want zero ability to cast any sort of spell. So when you have that, and 10 orcs can't, get to one place, it's like herding cats,
Oh yeah, I mean, one thing is that I've always joked that the mages should all wear yellow robes because we're a glorified taxi service.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the other thing is, we've straight up kicked people for using recall scrolls. That's just, it goes against the flavor of what we're trying to do here. When you look at at just about any setting, D&D or Lord of the Rings, or the different settings where we really get a lot of inspiration. Magic is a very rare thing with orcs. When you see that like the quote unquote good guys are going to go storm an orc fort, you don't picture a bunch of orc wizards, right?
Right,
You
right.
picture a bunch of giant hulking monsters with clubs and axes, and they might have a little guy in robe supporting them from the back end. And so our whole structure with this is just kind of to support that vision.
Yeah, even like in, I'm just thinking out loud now, even like in Lord of the Rings and stuff, I don't think they had any mages, right? I don't recall any if they did. In other,
I,
fantasy worlds they do, but they're definitely the fewer and far between. And there's
yeah.
something always wrong with them a little bit, they're always rare, sort of strange creatures.
I mean, yeah, Lord of the Rings was I mean, going off on that whole rabbit hole as to what the wizards even were in Lord of the Rings,
True.
but yeah, I mean, that was a very rare thing in general, and the orcs just plain didn't have access to that sort of thing, you know. Um,
We did a good
and
job with like creating a sort of culture or lore around magery because, for the listener, the way we sort of get around it a little bit, and is a huge part of this, is we've created a sort of concept behind orcs being afraid of magic in general. So anytime we see anything that looks like magery, the way we spin not being able to use it is, well, we're just ultimately afraid of it. So orcs who can wield magery, who are born with that ability, we kind of look at them with a little bit of a side eye, because they sort of creep us out as a whole.
oh yeah, that's a big point on our lore is that if you already have an existing orc character, he doesn't get to just wake up one day and realize that he's learned magic. I can't go up to a raider and say, "Hey, you want to learn magic?" Like, for us, it's a inborn ability. At least
Right.
that's how we view it. So, if a young orc is found to have that talent, everyone's instantly afraid of them and hates them, right?
Right,
So
right.
it's looked at as much a blessing as a curse for us. And it's honestly, I get a real kick out of it because there are several orcs that I'll just walk around and follow them in the stronghold, and then they get more and more nervous and start yelling at me, and then they and then they just run and leave the fort. I every so often I love doing that to Wug because Wug always plays along and gives me a good laugh out of it.
Yeah, yeah. Wug's a good grunt who hates magery and gets creeped out by it all the time. But we do,
And he's a great role player and very consistent. So it's
correct.
I always know that if I go up to him with this crap, he's gonna give me a really good time with it.
And we have, one thing that I love about us, is that we're restrictive in when it comes to a lot of things, and the restrictions could be for an entire other episode. But one of the things that I do love is that we're not restrictive to the type of orc that you want to be, meaning we don't have a construct of what we look like, other than what we're restricted to in game. Meaning, we're a certain orcs naturally are a certain color in the game. The NPCs, we can't change that, obviously, things like that. But in terms of the type of orc you want to be, we don't typecast anyone. So even in a position like Majors, for example, we've created basically three religions. I mean, that's fair to say, right? We basically have three religions that worship three different gods, and you're able to kind of spin which way you want to go.
I would say it's more like one single religion with three main facets, right? Because there actually isn't anything that prevents any orc from worshiping just two or all three if they wanted to.
Right.
We all naturally seem to gravitate towards following one, but that's never really been hard coded anywhere. Which I've always thought was interesting, just that we all seem to want to gravitate towards one. I don't know if it's just because we see ourselves as simple creatures, or if there's something just because I mean a lot of us are monotheistic most likely, or were raised that way. There's probably a lot of different possible explanations.
Yeah, that's
but
actually that's actually a very interesting thing. I mean, we have three orc gods we've created, but we tend to just worship one. I guess we align ourselves with one, and that could be because of our upbringing. But I do want to kind of mention them, the three, just to kind of get an idea of what the magery world looks like for us. Off the top of your head, I'm sure you could, but could you name the three and kind of what they represent, and any orc that follows them, any orc born with the ability to wield magery, or not, because you don't have to follow these gods, right? So any orc that follows them, what that even looks like for them.
Oh yeah, and if I couldn't name the three gods, I'm pretty sure that the elders would step in and just completely remove my title and ability to play a mage. But
Correct.
yeah, so let's go ahead and start with the most popular, right?
Oh
That's
yeah.
Belloc. Everyone loves Belloc. Everyone knows who Belloc is. Non-orcs know who Belloc is, and I'm pretty sure half of them think that that's our only god.
Correct.
Because someone's winning the popularity contest.
I think you know what I think. My theory is that his name's just the easiest to pronounce and remember. That's my theory.
Oh, no, no. I mean, you get a bunch of murderous orcs together and you tell them, hey, on top of being a murderer, you can also just be a straight up devil worshiper. And everyone's like, oh, hell yeah, I want to do that. Because Belloc is, basically the devil, right? He's the god of the underworld, mischief, death. He's that bump in the night figure, the boogeyman that orc mothers supposedly tell their children about to get them to behave, which I don't know how that works. I don't know how you get an orc child to behave other than beatings. I do think beatings tend to be our one answer to most problems in Bloodrock, and as it should be, really.
We haven't tried another method, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So, I mean, we just beat them until they figure it out.
Yeah, they either get in line or they stop moving, one or the other. Eventually, it works out. So it is kind of the universal medicine. But yeah, so Belloc, there's a lot of different ways you can worship Belloc as long as it involves killing, right?
Right.
You have for the Mojokas, you have necromancy, black magic, cursing, just all around. Evil sorcerer type of archetype, right? If for the grunts, a lot of them want to play it more like a berserker. For a long time, the Belloc thing was more about lurking in the shadows, backstabbing, more of your rogue and assassin type of character. But like you said, there's really any number of ways to do it. He appreciates killing. It is a violent video game. Not too hard to come up with an excuse.
Right.
It's a pretty easy one. It's kind of like with Krenbluck, right? Krenbluck is the goddess of blood. Mm-hmm. She's also the mother of all orcs. Not literally, but figuratively.
Right.
Spiritually, the mother of all orcs. But she is the goddess of blood. So, shedding blood, big thing. But you could also do that as a healer, right? Because you are healing blood loss. You're putting blood back in the body. You are also, if you're a good orator or something, you can lead the charge, get everyone pumped up, put that fire in their blood. I've seen that one too. There's the whole blood sacrifice angle as well. I mean, if it involves blood, you can pretty much shoehorn that in with Krenbluck. So, and my understanding is a long, long time ago, like back when Bloodrock was on Great Lakes, well before my time, Krenbluck was the most popular. Now, I've heard some debate on this, so I don't know which one it is, and I'm sure we have some way more qualified historians than myself who could weigh in on it at some point in the future. But those two are definitely the most popular gods, right?
But they're not the only ones. There's one more.
No, there is one more, and that's Krolnuk. Krolnuk was not an original god with Bloodrock. I don't know when he was written into the story. I mean, it was a long time ago. I believe it was still during the Great Lakes days. And he is the god of magic, poison, and madness, or insanity. Originally, it was just magic and poison, but I wanted to throw an extra thing in there because one thing that I had noticed from a lot of old history when I took over this role was that the majority of Krolnuk worshippers were just poisoning Dexers, right?
Right.
Which, there's nothing wrong with that, but it felt a little pigeonholed, right? I didn't want that to be as restrictive. I also wrote some stuff into some stories where there were orcs that had alchemy to do like natural medicines and things like that.
Right.
So I really tried to expand that role some. And of course, if you just wanted to be a crazy man running around talking to yourself, Krolnuk's also an acceptable choice there. So I really wanted to expand that portfolio somewhat and just give people options, because why would normal grunt run around worshiping the god who presides over the thing that everyone's afraid of and nobody wants anything to do with, right? Like, why would you follow the magic god? So that's kind of the whole thing with him, is that he's been very much a background figure in a lot of things, and I've been trying to pull him out of that and get him some more followers, because there's a lot of potential in the stories that I've read and a lot of great role-playing opportunities to really add more variety to the characters in the clan, which we already have tons, don't get me wrong. There's no real need for it, but a little more can never hurt, right?
Yeah, and in a kind of a lazy role player like myself, I mean, death, blood, easy, right? Easy connection. A little bit more difficult when you go beyond that. And considering sort of the nature of an orc, it makes sense that they would adhere to, a goddess of blood or the god of death. That makes sense. Now, but going on, so a weirdling, which is, for those listening, a weirdling is when you've reached high enough rank, and correct me if I'm wrong anywhere here, but when you've reached the high enough rank, you then can create a new character. We don't want your old character who's leveled up and all of that. You need to create a new character. This character will be born with the ability to wield magery, but at this point, they're basically, we hate them more than anyone else in the guild. And so we've kind of established that early on. It's a bit of a unique concept, right? Because we handicap players, and these are players who've been with us for a while. In the weirdling role, I believe you had a huge part in that. What is a weirdling, and kind of if you could briefly kind of explain their purpose in the clan.
A weirdling is a stupid magic baby.
Right. Yeah, that's it. Stupid magic baby.
That is kind of how, if someone just came up to me and said, for some reason, people fast-tracked him to making a weirdling, and he has no idea how to roleplay it, I'd say, think stupid magic baby. Now, they're not necessarily a baby. A great weirdling that Xu'rek was playing, who's now achieved the rank of young Mojoka, he was an old man, right? But the idea is it's an orc who was born with the ability to use magic, but hasn't learned how to control it yet. And they're probably also just a little bit unhinged because, again, they don't have control over the magic that influences them. So, how that translates to your personal roleplay is up to you. It might be that the voices won't stop. It might be that you're perceiving things weird. It might just be pure manic energy. Because you still haven't controlled all the magic energy flowing through your body. It's however you choose to do it, but you should be a little ridiculous, a little weird. You're the guy running around wearing an orc mask and a loincloth in the fort.
Yeah.
So have fun with it, right? This is your opportunity to be stupid. So have fun with it.
And when they've reached the rank high enough, they grow into a young, respectable Mojoka mage. And things start to change for them a little bit, right? So, like, the way we view mages, we do have a sort of reverence for them because, going back to the gods, we've had this debate internally before, but we don't know what they look like. There's debate whether they even exist, right? There's limited things that tell us that they uniquely exist. I know they've appeared a couple of times, or at least we've seen things where we believe they've appeared a couple of times in game, but it's still kind of all a little vague to us, but we respect them and revere them. A Mojoka can eventually become a representative of these gods, and with that comes a whole lot of respect, right?
Yeah. I do want to point out that you said the young Mojoka is a respectable figure, and I mean that
not just yet. Yeah,
that's up to them, But and it also depends on the orc viewing them, right? I mean, with Ermgirl, for instance, good Lord, does he respect anybody? I mean, let's be honest.
Well, I mean, I think when you, it's sort of like the Pope, right? I mean, at this point, like, no one's above you in your representation of the god, and you're kind of at the top, and you're not representing nice, friendly gods. You're representing cruel and well, at least that's how we depict them. So, yeah, I think a good representation of that should kind of reflect upon the mages representing them.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. But getting back to what you were saying earlier about the ranking and all of that, when a weirdling becomes a young Majoka, they may get a little bit more respect.
They get clothes. They get clothes.
Yeah, they do get a robe, which is certainly something. See, we have a rule in general in the clan where you're not supposed to attack the orc mages, right? And you can roleplay that out as fear, as reverence, as whatever, but you don't attack them. And it just has to do with the orc's relationship with magic. And yet, sometimes folks want to break that if you start picking a fight and, you attack them first. And honestly, as long as you're not a snotling, I don't really care. If you're really low rank, you're gonna get in trouble for that one. But if the grunt decides to fight back, I don't really care. We're just having fun, right?
Right.
But that even applies to the weirdlings. As awful and wretched and disrespectful as the weirdlings are, you're not supposed to attack them. However, there are rules that I made sure were implemented. So they're not supposed to, they're not allowed anything. They have to get by just on their wits and their magic, which they can't control. Mm-hmm. So if they survive, then they're able to have more. Now, we also understand that this is Outlands. If you PVM and you don't have aspect, you're screwed. So if they go out and do a dungeon and they want to wear leather armor in order to train their aspect, since they're going to be playing this character for a few months, we all have real lives, we're putting aside time to play this game, we don't want to make it impossible for you. So, and although the other restrictions I tell you about might make you rethink that, we don't want to make it completely impossible. So
no, but the difficulty Irma is appreciated by other orcs, like the lack of magery that exists within our clan, and sort of has developed an identity. We've developed an identity around it, and when we see an orc using magery, we know that they've earned it, right? It wasn't given to them. They didn't pay a bunch of money. They didn't just get accepted because they got 30 links and they're gonna down DPS boss. They're gonna DPS bosses. They earned it through scars. They earned it through RP. And in order to make a weirdling, we know you're going through a little bit of a rough patch to be a weirdling, but it's also kind of showing everybody, hey, I'm willing to put in the work to keep this tradition going. This tradition that's been around since we've been around, since the start of this whole thing back in '98.
In different forms, yeah. The weirdling thing is definitely new. Let me see how much the behind the scenes I want to reveal here, but
well, I guess I meant more like the concept of a mage user. Like even when I played, like back then, there were far and few between. It wasn't it wasn't as well established as we have it now with our current systems. Back then, it was kind of like you've been playing long enough, I guess you're a mage, But it was still restricted.
A lot of different clans have done it in different ways, and a lot of the time, from what I've seen, it has had to do with an application process or an invite process, one of the two. Bloodrock did an application process for a little while. But yeah, those days are done. So, nowadays, if you qualify, if you've put in your time, you can make a mage. That's just how it goes. So yeah, I mean, and the thing is that if you come in and you haven't even made your first snotling yet, and you start going, I want to make a mage. I'm a really good mage. I'm a great mage. Let me be a mage.
Right.
It's not going to go great for you, but
because we're breaking the. I say this often, Ermin. You may disagree with me, but I attribute it to years and years of us playing one-player games where the world revolves around us. I'm in Skyrim. This world. I'm the main character. It revolves around me. In Outlands, it's a similar concept, right? When they log in, they don't see a community. A lot of people, a lot of people don't see a community of people. They just want to be the number one star wherever they're at. And we're saying, actually, we want you to do the opposite. We want to handicap you on purpose, right? Because it makes the game more fun for us, and that's how we play. Yeah. But yeah, I see it often.
Yeah, I mean, you see both. I think here in Outlands, you see a mix of both. there are plenty of people who think that the whole server revolves around them. I mean, that's not a secret. Everybody on Outlands knows that. Go look at the Discord, right? People are either behaving that way or getting called out for it. Pretty much every day from what little I've seen. I don't really check the Discord that often. But there is also the inverse. I see that a lot here in the RP community where people try to work together to tell a story, and people are attempting to come together and actually make the game more fun for each other because they know that in turn the other people will turn around and make it more fun for them. And that isn't just in the RP community. I mean, you see that in factions. You see that with some of the big PVM guilds out there. There are a lot of people that do that. But at the same time, there's a ton of people out there who look at these things a little more selfishly. And that is not really the type of player that we want.
Correct.
You know, if I'm just being completely honest and blunt about it, that's not the type of player that we want here in Bloodrock. We want the type of player who wants to contribute and wants to make things more fun for not only the guild as a whole, but for the other guilds that we work with and just for the server. I mean, that being said, yeah, if you catch us at the wrong time on a slaughter moon, we might have made your night a little less fun. You know,
Right,
it does happen, right? But by and large, we try to contribute to the server more so than we take. But yeah, and that's a lot of what happens with the Weirdling role and why I've designed it with certain restrictions, because I want to train people that way. Because we've had some people come in that have said, "Oh, I want to be a mage. I want to be a mage, and I'm the best at it. I'm really good at it."
Right.
And then they want to come in, make like a typical archer, Heli mage type of thing, and just be the superstar. And that, like I said earlier, you have to be a team player and support the Dexers and kind of roll with whatever they're doing. And you're not going to be able to do that with all of these preconceptions. So the first restriction that Weirdlings have, aside from the equipment, is that they are not allowed to use the evaluate intelligence skill at all. They have to set that to 0 and lock it when they make the character, and we actually do checks of this and ask for a screenshot of their skills.
I imagine a lot of people listening are like, "What the heck, dude? How could you be a mage without eval?" You know.
There are ways, and I've tested them. I've figured out how to do it. I'm not saying that they're foolproof, amazing ways, because you're not likely to kill someone one-on-one with it, but that's kind of the point. We want you to be weak. We want you to suck as a Weirdling, because you're going to have to learn. First of all, it's going to encourage you to be clever and find workarounds for a restriction like that. And it's also going to require you to focus more on teamwork. You're going to be out there in a group going, well, I can't blow this guy up, but I can heal these guys. Well, I can cast a wall here. I can put up a summon to block mobs. You know, you're going to learn about the toolkit of the mage more so than just all the damage. And that's really what we want. You know, I've also encouraged some new Weirdlings to go pick up a skill that gives them hamstring. You know, just, rope and teleport up there and slow the guy down so your friends can catch up.
Yeah.
Like little things like that. We've also put a cap on poisoning skill, and you're not allowed to use arcane at all as a Weirdling.
Right.
And just weapons in general, you're not allowed, except for a dagger. You can carry a crappy little dagger around, or a parry dagger instead of a shield if you want to go the parrying route.
And no necromancy till much later, right? I mean, that's a Bedlock specific sort of ability that gets unlocked further down the road.
Necromancy gets unlocked for everybody down the road, but there are certain restrictions. The Belloc mages are the only ones that are going to be able to use Vengeful Spirit to turn their summons into undead.
I see.
Yeah, and the Krolnuk mages aren't going to have that many other restrictions. I'm not 100% sure what the Krenbluck people are doing right now. 'Cause this is something that we just hashed out last week, at least as of the time of this recording. And so it's some of it's still up in the air, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
But I don't know. Have you seen the actual list of things that we're doing?
I have, yeah, I reviewed it, and I think it's all, I think we dance between, and we walk the fine line in between having a structure and not, pigeonholing people in their RP. So we give them the ability to, we restrict what we believe is in the best interest of the clan, but, there's a lot of creativity to be had there. And funny enough,
Yeah.
you're talking about like the weirdling and the role, the intended role, and well, the intended purpose behind the role's existence. We have an event tomorrow where, as of today's recording, we are fighting GG on their island, and a couple of orcs are excited, and I've put this together, and I'm sorry, this is tonight. Tonight we're fighting them, and a weirdling messaged me and said, "Can I come on my weirdling? He sucks, but I can heal in the back lines," and I'm like, this is kind of the point, right? This is good. This is what you're supposed to be doing anyway. And hopefully, it's a good example of kind of the role that we expect them to do and why the weirdling kind of position frames it for them in that regard.
That's perfect. And send me a message after this. Tell me who that was, because that's great that they're picking that up. And I wanna look into that further. But yeah, I designed because I did a lot of the writing for the weirdling and its restrictions, primarily.
I love
And
that.
it was there to be restrictive. It was there to be a miserable experience. And originally, I said it would take 80 scars to get out of, which I believe you had a lot of
I had
objection
pushed.
to.
I'm the friendly one. I know, but
No,
the
we
good thing
dialed it
is
back.
that the good thing is that I did agree with you that the scars, and for those listening who don't know, our ranking system isn't like a good old boy system. We have a scar based system where basically it's a point based system. So if you attend an event, if someone in leadership has an RP event or a PvP event or a dungeon crawl or boss night or whatever you have it, attendance means a scar. So you earn your way to these ranks and these unlocks via that route. But yeah, he wanted them to be weirdlings for like 5 years or something, and I had a little bit of a pushback.
Well, it wouldn't have taken quite 5 years. And some events will give you multiple scars. And you know how it is during the holiday season. Those scars just flood you.
Yeah,
with all the
yeah,
stuff we
yeah.
do between October's Halloween event that we always try to prioritize and incentivize people into getting in there. And, all the stuff that goes on during the winter breaks. But, and sometimes a scar is as simple as just going patrol around the fort with a captain, right?
Right.
So 80 scars was still a terrible, terrible thing to restrict someone to not having, evaluate intelligence for that long. But my main thing was just to put that up there as a deterrent to people who weren't devoted to playing that role, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I wanted them to look at that, go, yeah, this isn't for me, and walk away from it. And I figured we were going to scale it back. Zutlug came through, made a weirdling, tested it, and we figured out a time frame that was actually much more acceptable. And it may change here and there,
Right.
just depending. But so far, I think we're at 30 scars, or we're near 30 scars. I think I actually put it to 32 because it should be a weird number.
The
They're
weirdling with
weirdlings.
weird numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did want to make it where it's just enough of a drag, just enough of a haul that by the time you're done with it, you really feel like you earned it. But I also wanted people to sit there and just go, God, I made a mage. I have to earn my scars on this character. I can't transfer them from an alt. And I have to play him, and this is terrible. But I guess I could contribute this way, and then they figure it out, and then by the time they're done, the method of team play is actually, drilled into them,
Not only that, but
fact
the role play too, because earlier this week we attended the Sir Knights Tavern event. They had Tavern Nights on Tuesdays. Sir Knights Guild does, and Dorchok, one of our orcs who has a weirdling now, he attended as his weirdling, and he did this funny thing where they have like a shelf with a bunch of loaves of bread in the corner, and he was like emoting, like rubbing his dirty fingers all over the bread and just like being disgusting in the corner, just naked weird orc in the corner just being disgusting. And I was like, everyone is grossed out by it. I'm like, he's freaking nailing the role, and he earned the scar
exactly
for
what
it,
we want. That is exactly what we want out of the weirdlings. Just a disgusting nude man in the corner. That's your whole point. That's what you're there to be.
Who was it that was it? It might have been Omeg who had his weirdling just staring at the out into the window of our stronghold of our house. Was it Omeg who had him? He would just his role play for he would just have this weird naked orc standing outside the window and just like doing weird things out there. So it's hilarious.
Well, Omeg's weirdling took on a whole new disturbing life of his own, and I don't know how much of that we want to talk about. But we've actually had a lot of weirdlings who love to stare in the window of the stronghold, because they're really not supposed to go into the stronghold.
Right.
But they're mages. They're curious. Their brains work that way, so they're always staring in there trying to figure out what's going on. Back when the house that we use as the guild vendor was Nerul's house, a few of us used to just stand there, go AFK, and stare in the windows. Yogg and I have both done a fair bit of that. Yogg's done way more than I have, but it is something that we've all done just to torment the elder, really. But yeah, the weirdlings, it's a trial by fire. It is the great, this great big quest for them to see if they can get by their wits with basically no equipment out in the wilds of orc society, which you'd probably be better off in the jungle, but it is what it is. And trying to get by through the like I said, through their wits, through the grace of the gods, and through their magical skills. And it's the test is if the player can deal with it, if they want to put up with all this crap, to be able to be the special boy, because being an orc mage, they are special characters. They get a lot of, if they start to rank up, they get a lot of recognition and a lot of respect. So you kind of have to gatekeep that to some extent, right?
Yeah, and I think ever since I've played, and from what I know, mages have always, other than weirdlings, which I think is a great concept, but once you're a full-fledged mage or Mojaka in the guild, there's a huge level of respect and of responsibility that comes with it. So from a non-mage orc player, I mean, to me that's huge, because I don't want a Mojaka that isn't going to carry a little bit of the RP weight on their shoulders in terms of defining who we are, not just who we've been, but any sort of new concepts and ideas. Historically, mages have been sort of like our elders. We look at them with reverence, and there are leaders in the clan outside of the war chief and the typical war, brutish leaders. The spiritual leaders, the soul of the clan, have always been the mages, the few that we have, and how you carry that is pretty important.
Oh yeah, I mean, you nailed it when you said they're the spiritual leaders. They're the keepers of the culture. They're the keepers of the religion. That's a big deal.
Yeah, a huge one. Okay, Aram, last question for you, and feel free to answer this however you wish. If you could change anything about magery in Outlands, what would it be and why? Doesn't have to be specific to orcs, although you can tie it into orc magery if you wish.
To be honest with you, the magery playstyle is a lot of the mechanics overall in UO boil down to just straight numbers on damage. Yes, mages have the widest toolkit of anyone else, but a lot of it is very simple, addition, subtraction, right? Like, you look at the debuff spells and it's all affecting your stats, which, I mean, why do we do weaken? It's just to make your hit point pool lower, right?
Right.
I'd love to see more things like status effects in the game. In PvP, I would like to see, different movement speed type of effects. A haste spell would be cool, or a 1 second stun. Adding cooldowns to those things, obviously, you'd want to do that. I mean, there's a lot that I could say about stuff I'd love to see in UO that would either be compatible with a totally different version, or might be beyond the scope of what people want to play. So this is just a personal preference. But, for me, I like playing mages in games, but I really like playing them because they have a wide toolkit. You're kind of like your group Swiss Army knife, right? Like, oh, this door's locked, and our thief, he doesn't have lockpicks with him. That's cool. I have a spell for it. Oh, we need to talk to this guy, but he's dead. That's cool. I have a spell for it. The water's
spell for
poisoned. Either I or the priest have a spell for it. I love being able to be that utility character. And don't get me wrong, I love blowing stuff up. I mean, if the lottery house bombings are any indication, I love blowing stuff up.
Side note, we need a lottery house bombing episode in the future for sure, because those stories are funny. But
those are good stories.
To what you said about the variety, I mean, I agree with you. If you were, did you ever play Pokemon back, like Game Boy Pokemon when it first came out?
I played blue version. That's about. That's really all my experience with Pokemon. So I hope that's the era you're talking about.
Yeah, that's the era. That's the era. But my main point is that when you get these basic, and it's a very simple game, but they'd have multiple attacks. They'd have, some of them would have like Tackle or like Sandstorm. Sandstorm didn't do any damage, but it reduced the accuracy, etc. No one ever did fucking Sandstorm, right? We just tackle, because there's something about not doing damage, and if the effect of, say, the Sandstorm isn't large enough to where it's overwhelmingly evident that it's uber beneficial, we seem to avoid it. At least I did, and I see that in these sorts of games. It would be cool to see something like something more creative like that. It would diversify the game to where not everyone's just corporing left and right, but instead being more creative with the spells and what they're doing.
Oh yeah, I mean, and speaking of the the corpor trains, like, making it so that that's not possible and that groups have to call and diversify their spells and just put a little more effort into sync dumping. I mean, you're never going to get away from that, right? Called targets on voice, you're always going to have that in an MMO. But, if you're going to be able to walk up and insta-kill someone, maybe make it a little harder. Conversely, put a cooldown on being able to get hit with the G-Heal, or make it so there's diminishing returns in a certain window of time. Things that can cut back on, chasing people across the map. And I think you could really do that with the changes to the Mage's Toolkit. Again, I know this is kind of a controversial opinion, or maybe not controversial, but
no,
not everyone's going to agree with me. And some people like the game just the way that it is, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, if I wasn't liking it, I wouldn't be playing it. So I'm not trying to sit here and crap all over their system, because, like I said, I play it. Clearly I'm having a good time. But, I would love to see... I'd love to see the AOS style weapon specials, return to Dexers.
Oh man.
I would love to see a lot of changes to Magery, where it's, like I said, more about a toolkit, more about support. Obviously damage is cool, but I love being able to go out there and change the world and change things. Like, I don't have to be the guy blowing everything up. I've got a bunch of grunts with axes to do that for me. Right.
It could make it a little bit different and more applicable to our playstyle and other playstyles, because I've always said if you broke down Magery into like 3 different skills, say healing or anything like that, damage and other or whatever you want to do there, the roleplay aspect would be there. That'd be awesome to be able to just be a healer and focus on the healer's codex, but for Magery healing codex, something like that, to where you're now a certain type of mage. That would be cool.
I've always been a huge fan of specialized magic systems. I played an RPG a long time ago now, because we're all getting old, but every time, every mage was different, because they, as they leveled up, they would buy their schools of magic individually. Like when I'm playing D&D, I love playing the specialist mage that, like the necromancer or the transmuter or the illusionist, who really goes hard on focusing on a specific area. For a couple of reasons. One, I think that's more interesting for the DM when they tailor stuff, because I'm not the guy who has every answer. I have a lot of answers, and some of the stuff that I have to use a little more creatively to get to where I want. I'm not just, true seeing and dropping nukes everywhere and opening every single door. I have some amount of restriction just based on the theme and the roleplay, which I guess just ties back to the whole thing about why I'm playing in an orc guild, right? Because I enjoy the restrictions. I enjoy overcoming the challenges.
Yeah, no, and I think it speaks to anyone who becomes a mage in the Bloodrock clan. They probably feel the same. You know, they enjoy the restrictions, and once you get there, it's an awesome accomplishment, in my opinion. Any mage in the clan, if you see them out there in Outlands, they've earned those stripes, and they very much deserve to be wielding the magery, the Mojaka. All right, Aaron. Well,
Yeah,
that does it for the episode, man. Thank you so much for coming on. Any last thoughts? Anything you want to share?
I'm guessing you're going to share the link to the Discord and all of that, and encourage people to come join us and play around and all that. So yeah, I mean that's my main suggestion. You know, if you hey, if the idea of playing an orc mage really interests you, come play an orc. You know, the time will go by faster than you think, and you'll probably have a lot of fun playing a grunt. I came into Bloodrock kind of thinking I might want to make a mage eventually, because I'd never played a mage in UO before, and I was curious as to what it was like. Um, but I have a lot of fun memories playing on my grunt. I have a lot of um, yeah, I have a lot of great stories from that, and I'm really glad that I still spent that time starting over in this clan, learning new things, meeting new people, and just generally climbing up the ranks like I did. Um, so yeah, being a mage was a fun end goal, but man, the journey itself, even as a snotling, the journey of playing an orc in Bloodrock is a tremendous amount of fun, and it's the only way I could ever see myself playing UO in the future. Like I've seen other games come out, and I'm like, that looks cool, but if Bloodrock isn't interested, then I don't think I'm that interested, because we really do have something special here. If it seems like something that you think might be fun, but you're hesitant to try it out, just come give it a try. I mean, everyone here is very friendly. They're good at helping you out with any questions that you've got. No one's going to bite your head off for not knowing stuff. If the language intimidates you, just learn the basics and you'll be fine. Like, nobody starts off knowing everything, and
Right.
nobody starts off doing this stuff perfect. So, you know, if you want to come play, come play. If you want to be our next big enemy, hey, we welcome that too. You know, an orc guild is nothing without someone to fight. So, however it is you want to interact with us, you know, come by. You're all welcome.
All right, Aaron. Well said. Thanks for coming, man. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too.
Bye bye. All right. Well, that wraps up my episode with what a great episode. We covered a lot about magery. This is the beginning of what we hope to be a podcast series dedicated to examining Ultima Online the way we like to play it. If you're interested in this sort of podcast, please keep in mind any future episodes that we'll be posting. If you have any questions, concerns, or any episode ideas, feel free to reach out to Xu'rek or anyone over at the Bloodrock clan, and we can consider them for future episodes. Thanks for listening.